and gives big money to the Democrats and all that. But I read about him all the time. He's here in New York. He's got a unique niche in the movie business where he makes these independent films, or he buys them from other independent filmmakers, and he distributes them, and they do very well. He's big time in the movie business. I never heard this. I'm not surprised because I think there's more of this going on all the time than we know. Look at Fox. How many of these people at Fox were doing it and had to get blown out of there?
Yeah, no kidding. I guess the carnage is pretty well over at Fox, right? Or there's still things that are out there?
Well, I don't think there's any out there of any of the on-air people. I think that's pretty well. I don't think anybody's suspended. There was a little issue with Charles Payne, but
that went away.
That was. I think they investigated it and they reinstated him.
Yeah.
And then the woman that claimed he raped her, and that was an allegation, she's suing now.
Oh.
But Fox, I guess Fox is satisfied at the moment that he didn't do anything wrong. They put him back on the air. But the other ones, Ailes gone, O'Reilly gone, Eric Bolling gone, and Bill Shine, who was Ailes' right-hand man, and was in on the covering up of all the sexual harassment, he's gone. There's one other one still there, the lawyer who did the payoffs of the women. She's still the corporate lawyer, but I think that they'll get rid of her pretty soon.
Wow. Shop Talk continues with Megyn Kelly, who seems to be bombing every time she tries a new show. That's unbelievable.
Well, at Fox, when I was at Fox, she was at Fox. I didn't know her. I had nothing to do with her, but I heard from people that she was a real prima donna and she treated the staff terribly. And that means makeup, hair and makeup people, technical people, put the mic on you and all that type of thing. And she was haughty and rude and treated them badly. So I'm not surprised. I don't think she's very good. I think she was good on Fox because Roger Ailes built a show for her to play upon her strengths, which is she's a lawyer. She's pretty good at questioning people sort of with hostile intent. She's good looking, so they always put the see-through desk so you can see her legs and all that. But you take her out of that and put her over on NBC trying to host a live audience show where she said, I'm not going to talk about politics. Well, I don't want to watch Megyn Kelly do a cooking segment. That's not her thing. She's miscast for that job. And I bet you a year from today, that woman won't even be on TV. She might be on MSNBC doing an hour of some sort of political show. Maybe. But the NBC experiment is a bomb, both Sunday night at 7, which is already gone because of football for the season, and the new thing at 9 a.m. weekdays, the third hour of today with Megyn Kelly, is not going to work.
Now, what do? They delay Hoda and what's her name?
Yeah, they were always going at 10. Kathy Lee and Hoda are at 10. So that didn't get changed. It was the third hour of the Today Show where Al Roker and Dylan Dreyer and a couple other people would sit around and talk. That they've removed that to put Megyn on.
Yeah. Jeez. Unbelievable.
Well,
meanwhile,
to be fair, it's a new show. New shows usually take some time to find their legs. So maybe she can get it to work. I don't know. But I'm pessimistic because I think she's not that good, frankly. And not at that. That's not her thing. She's not cutie pie pretending to be Mary Poppins on the Today Show like Katie Couric, who was great at it. Katie Couric was meant for the Today Show. Perky, smiley, funny, self-deprecating. She left that for the big paycheck to go be the anchor of the CBS Evening News. Complete disaster. They were in third place when she went there, and she ended up in third place when she left. Then she goes to ABC. That didn't work. She ended up on Yahoo News. That didn't work. She's off of there, I believe. She's at nowhere because she left a niche that was perfect for her, the Today Show. Megyn Kelly was perfect for Fox News at 9 o'clock at night. Perfect. She should have stayed there.
We have a question for you from Ormond Beach. Let's take Gary's phone call now. You're on with John LeBoutelier on WNDB. Gary, your question. Go right ahead.
Gentlemen, good afternoon. A pleasure to talk to both of you. John,
Hi.
I'm a fellow Long Islander from Babylon, so
Beautiful.
it's always good. My question is, I heard you speak earlier about, I believe you said the Washington Post, and there were 19 sources and all. And I'd just like to hear from you as a man who knows Washington well. When I see this stuff from like the Post and the New York Times and reliable sources, I'm very skeptical of, if that's really the truth and what's going on, and how confident you feel when you see or read that.
Well, I think what's happened is, Gary, it's a good question, that because Trump has accused these organs of being fake news, they have gone out of their way to make sure they're getting the story right. Normally, they would never need 19 sources to say that Tillerson has threatened to quit. But they've gone out, they've got White House sources, State Department sources, other diplomats who are aware of it. I believe the story. I believe the story. When it's sourced like that, I believe it.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Right,
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
239-0033, AT&T star 1150. Precious minutes left. Got to ask you about baseball, Yanks, Red Sox, others. What's going on?
Well, in a few minutes, I believe the Red Sox are going to start at Houston. Some pitching duel. Chris Sale is dynamite against Justin Verlander. And then after that, the Yankees at Cleveland. And the Yanks had a great playoff win the other night to get into the series. And it's really this month. If you love baseball, this is the best month, obviously. It's great.
Well, I have to say that I read a story in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that says that baseball, like every sport, seems to be going through something. I didn't know this until I read it the other day. There were more stoppage in play, longer periods, so at 3 minutes and 46 seconds between pitches sometimes. That was the average because of the delays. That the game has gotten even slower, and they're trying to find ways to speed it up. I don't know if the fans notice, if they're able to fill around that with TV. But what do you think? Is the game getting slower, or is it staying the same, or is it getting faster?
Well, it's certainly not getting faster. I mean, statistically, I think those numbers are correct. I don't think it's 3 minutes between pitches. It's
ball and play. 3 minutes between and 46 seconds between the ball and play.
I don't know what that means, ball and play.
Well, in other words, somebody hits a grounder and it's fielded, or a fly ball or something.
Yeah, okay, so that doesn't take 3 minutes. What's the 3 minutes? I mean, until the next pitch, is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
So I think the biggest thing, there's a couple things that make the game longer than it used to be, is that they have a rule that they don't really enforce. There's nobody on base. I'm batting, you're pitching, Mark, right?
Yeah.
I am not supposed to step out of the batter's box without asking the umpire's permission. And therefore, you, Mark, get the ball pitched to, thrown back to you by the catcher. You've got 20 seconds to get the sign and pitch to me. And once that's caught by the catcher and he throws it back, it starts again. I am not allowed to step out of the batter's box and slow it down. But if you watch these games, they step out on every pitch. They readjust their batting gloves. They're getting airtime on TV while the announcer says, well, Joe Smith is hitting 387 against left-handers, blah, blah. Then I've adjusted my gloves and looked around and spit a couple times. I step back in the batter's box and we begin again. In the old days, they couldn't do that. 1 foot had to remain in the batter's box at all times. This is with no one on base. Now, if there's a runner on base, that rule does not apply. But they're not enforcing that rule, and that's adding quite a few minutes onto the length of the game. That's one of the biggest things that's going on. Then, there's something that used to never happen 40 years ago. Happens now all the time, which is they change pitchers 5 or 6 times per game. Yeah, so the pitching coach comes out to buy time while the guy's warming up in the bullpen. Goes back to the dugout. A couple of pitches are thrown. Now the manager comes out. Gets out to the mound. He waits. He talks. He's waiting for the umpire to come out. Just when the ump gets there, manager says, bring in the right-hander. So now the right-handed guy jogs in from the bullpen. He gets 8 warm-up pitches. We start up. He pitches to one batter. He gets him out. Out comes the manager. You're out. I'm bringing in a left-hander. This adds on, I don't know how many minutes to a game, but it's going on all the time. The other night, the Yankees changed pitchers in the first inning.
Yeah.
And then off we go. Now, they had a few guys who pitched 2 or 3 innings each, but it was a 4-hour-plus game.
Okay.
Crazy.
Hey, before you go, because our time is winding up, David Black wants to know who John would like to see as president. I appreciate hearing different opinions, but man, John makes my blood boil. Ha ha, thanks as always. Who would you like to see as president?
Well, we don't have an election now, so we've got Trump as president.
Is there anybody out there right now that you like?
I would like to see someone, all right, who wants to change the country and knows how to change it. It's not enough just to go there and be all PO'd all the time. Reagan was an outsider. He went to a Democratic city, Washington, D.C., had a Democratic House of Representatives. He got the whole thing changed. He didn't start bitching at his own staff publicly. He didn't go nuts against his own party. And he got it done because he knew how to work. First of all, he knew how to hire good people and listen to them. And secondly, he was able to get the country behind him. He had 60% of people behind him, not 35%. He went out to be popular and get people to support him. He changed the country for the better. And we lived off of Reagan for 20-plus years because of what he did. And that's the lesson that this team ought to study, but they don't do it.
And we're out of time, my friend. We just went through it very quickly. We'll be reading and we'll be listening. John, talk to you next week at our usual time.
All right, Mark. Thanks.
More of Mark Bernier Replay Today. Highlights from today's show that you may have missed. Coming up on WNDB.
This is a Hurricane Irma insurance alert. In the coming weeks, crooks, shysters, and predators will be approaching you, hoping to take advantage of you at your most desperate hour. I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan, and I have some important advice about your business or homeowner's claim. First, don't sign over benefits from your insurance to anyone. Next, never allow any company to take a percentage of your claim. You don't have to. Also, visit hurricanelawyer.com to download a free copy of our Hurricane Bill of Rights. That's hurricanelawyer.com. When your insurance company is not fair, they must pay our legal fees when we file suit and win on your behalf. And finally, if they aren't being fair, tell them you're calling me. The only thing they hate worse than paying you is paying me. Visit hurricanelawyer.com today. Morgan & Morgan, for the people. Offices, Daytona Beach.
Beach Street is getting a spooky flair with Boo Bash. Friday, October 13th from 5 to 9. That's right, Friday the 13th, the Free Street Festival takes over the 100 block of North Beach Street from 5 to 9 p.m. Boo Bash offers a Monster Mash dance party with live DJ, great food and drink specials at local eateries, trick-or-treat stops, fun games along the sidewalks, and lots of candy. Be sure to come dressed in costume for this Halloween street party that also includes a kids' craft station where they can pick up and decorate their own trick-or-treat bag for free. Then, go trick-or-treat at the shops on the block. Event parking is plentiful throughout the downtown district, behind stores and on side streets. Bring your friends and family in costume to Daytona Beach's spooky Beach Street haunting Boo Bash. Friday, October 13th from 5 to 9 p.m. Sponsored by Burgoyne Properties, Ruin Zifra, and Metro PCS. Brought to you by WNDB.
This is Mark Bernier Replay Today. Highlights from today's show that you may have missed.
The Miami Book Fair is full of interesting stories. A lot of them, too, relate to Florida, South Florida, and Miami. This one was one that we took off the shelf because we wanted to look at this. Andrew Frank has come up with a book about how Miami and its ancient roots developed. It's the first time we've ever had anything like this. A long history, 4,000 years ago when Tequesta Indians settled at the mouth of the river, erecting burial mounds and ceremonial centers and villages. To talk about it and how Miami developed, Andrew Frank joins us now live today on WNDB's Mark Bernier program. Andrew, thanks for being with us, sir.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Mark. This is a pleasure.
Okay, how was it that you came to be so interested in this, and how did you do the research on it?
Well, I came to it from different ways. So I was born in New York, and like many, I came to Florida in the 70s as a young kid. And I grew up in South Florida surrounded by Tequesta Mounds. I went to Seminole Middle School in Broward. But as much as I was surrounded by native people and native kind of language and words, I knew nothing about them. And I went off to graduate school, and I went to University of Florida, really interested in connecting the ancient world and the modern world. And I've been teaching at Florida State for about a decade. And then I got a phone call from an attorney who was representing the developer of this piece of property on the north bank of the Miami River. And he very much wanted to know before he went into mediation and figure out what to do with this property, what was there. And so I threw myself into an archive and library at History of Miami and elsewhere, trying to figure out what can I do to kind of connect that Tequesta world of the mound builders and bring them up to the present. And what I found was really remarkable, because we have just about 4,000 years of continuous history on one piece of property that kind of calls into question our idea that St. Augustine is the oldest city in America, or that Columbus is the beginning of America. So we have this really nice sense that the Tequesta, who are there for a very long time, they have an impact on the history that continues up until the present.
What happened with the Tequesta Indians? Were they driven off? Were they put on the March of Tears? What happened?
Well, the Tequesta story is like many of the ancient Indian stories in the United States, especially in the Southeast. So they're there from about 4,000 years ago until, say, Ponce de Leon, when he comes to Florida. He sees the Tequesta in 1513, and then the Spanish build missions in the 1600s, and then again in the early 1700s. And then slave raids come in, along with epidemic diseases, and these slave raids and diseases devastate these communities, and their populations crumble, and they start to reform. So there are some Tequesta who survive, and they link up with and form new communities with the Ais from further up the coast, some Calusa perhaps from the west coast, from some of the interior Indians, and they create these new groups. And then migrants come in that we know as Creeks and later Seminoles, and so some of these Tequesta and Calusa become part of this new nation that we know as Seminoles. And so they are not there as a polity, as a government anymore. They're not there really as a culture anymore. But some of their great-great-grandchildren are members of the Seminole tribe and other tribes in the United States today. But they're devastated. I mean, they're mostly they go from populations in the thousands to populations in the dozens.
Wow. Were they systematically killed? Were they sold into slavery? What happens?
Well, we have hundreds of them were sold off into slavery. They were captured by mostly Native Americans who were paid by the British, and they were shipped off to the Caribbean. And now we haven't been able to trace what happened to those populations, and there may be members in the Caribbean or residents in the Caribbean whose ancestry goes back to certainly possible. But a lot of them were killed in these raids, and then there was warfare, and then smallpox and other epidemics. Much like the rest of North America, these European diseases were incredibly devastating for the Tequesta and others.
Oh.
So by around 1720, there really are very, very few Tequesta in South Florida. But the Seminoles are moving in, and they're absorbing some of these survivors.
The listeners here have a great interest in Henry Flagler. How does he come into understand, appreciate, and otherwise try to showcase Miami?
Yeah, well, he serves as the bookend. So if the Tequesta are the early bookends of my story, Flagler is the last bookend. And so Flagler built his Miami hotel, the Royal Palm, exactly on the same piece of property that Tequesta had their centralized community on the mouth of the Miami River. And part of what I try to do in the book is explain that that's really no coincidence, that the reason why the Tequesta chose the mouth of the Miami had a lot to do with transportation and the resources of that river, and all the subsequent residents of this area, they come and they replace one another, one after the other, and ultimately it's Julia Tuttle who takes this piece of property, and she lives there, and she invites Flagler basically to share the property with her. They split it up, And that's how Flagler brings, when the railroad gets extended into Miami, he puts the Royal Palm literally directly on where these mounds were. So much so that his construction crews wrote in quite detail of what do you do with these large mounds, how they leveled them with shovels, and where there were burial mounds, they were talking about skulls being thrown into sinkholes. But for the most part, these mounds were used as fill. So how do you create a perfectly flat, raised piece of property? They use these old mounds, primarily of shells, and leveled the area. And so the physical memory got lost.
Okay. Do we know much about any relationship between Havana, Cuba, and Miami over the years? I'm talking about going way back. Is it like a hopping point? Do people go back and forth? Is it often confused and people think that it's the same country? With the Indians? Anything?
We know a lot. We don't know as much as we would like. We always want to know more. But it's pretty clear that Miami, from long before the 20th century, had its roots and its connections to the Caribbean, and that included Havana and the rest of Cuba. It also included the Bahamas. And so if you can imagine Miami bleeding down towards the Keys, that's very easy for us to imagine. But from the Keys to Cuba, that was a much traveled trade route for both native peoples and then the Spanish long after that, and then later the British and then the United States. So in many ways, Miami's history is connected to Havana and the rest of, say, the Spanish Empire in ways that it really wasn't connected to even St. Augustine or the British colonies to the north. And that goes back a very long ways.
Tell us about Julia Tuttle.
Julia Tuttle, she's wonderful. So Julia Tuttle has a reputation as being the mother of Miami. And she comes to Miami like many others, and she comes from the Midwest, from Cleveland. And her father was to the region, and who very much wanted to kind of make a profit off of various industries and struggled in many ways. And Tuttle, who's a widow, she comes and takes over his efforts, the father's efforts, and tries to turn what she imagined to be a wilderness and turn it into a city. And in doing so, she moves into a piece of property that was very old. And she was aware that it was old, but probably not as aware as old as it was. So she moved into a piece of property that the United States used as a fort during the Second and Third Seminole War, and before that was a slave plantation, and before that was a Spanish mission, and before that was the Tequesta village. And she moves there, and she complains at end on how much work it is to turn basically a residence into a residence. It's a fun way of saying it, but she sees this residence, and it's not up to her standards. It's not up to what she imagines as an upper-class Midwesterner when she wants what she imagines civilization to be. She has to convert it. So how do you turn officers' barracks or slave quarters into something that was more to her liking? And so she complained about wild lime trees growing in Miami. And, of course, these were lime trees that are not native to Florida but planted there generations earlier, both by slave planters and before that by Bahamian boaters and maybe even Cuban boaters before that. So she is this really interesting woman. So she is, on one hand, erasing the past behind her, but then she's inviting Flagler and others to try to make this not just home, but a point of development. So Tuttle is the one who sends off orange blossoms during a freeze to Flagler to explain to him that the weather down in Miami or in South Florida is divine. And this is a decision that Flagler had been contemplating for a long time, but this seems to be the last kind of the camel that broke his back that led him to decide to extend the railroad south. And then when Tuttle takes her land and splits it up with Flagler, financially this becomes a really good deal for Flagler. And so Tuttle is very much this transitional figure. So she has her foot in the past, and she's doing her very best to try to squelch it and silence it, and she's trying to usher in this modern world.
The book is called Before the Pioneers, Indians, Settlers, Slaves, and the Founding of Miami. We know that from the history, Andrew Jackson, the nation's 7th president, was a force in Florida. Did he spend much time in early Miami?
He never came down to Miami. Many of his soldiers did, and the United States saw Miami as an important part of the Second and then later the Third Seminole War. But Jackson didn't spend much time in Florida at all. So during the First Seminole War, he was a general, and he made his way through the Panhandle, and then when he was the governor of Florida, he was not a big fan of the territory, and so he spent some time in St. Augustine and Pensacola and a little bit in Tallahassee, and then he arranged to transfer power to someone else, and he got out. So he was interested in Florida in terms of opening it up to development and settlement, but he was not interested in spending much time here himself.
We know that Florida changed hands a few times. The British were involved, the Spanish, even the French at one point. How does that play into the development of Miami? Do these cultures clash, or do they not all convene on Miami?
Well, most of them convene. The French are not quite here for very long, but I would say so. It's a world up until the 1700s. The Spanish arrive in 1513, but they're interlopers. They're not in control for very long. But then the Spanish are here from until 1763, and they turn the property over to the British for 20 years, and then the Spanish come back, and then ultimately by 1821 it becomes part of the United States and a state in 1845. But in Miami's sense, the residents who are here live largely because they don't necessarily want to be part of the empire. So the missionaries want to be part of the empire, but outside of them, a lot of refugees from around the Caribbean will come in. Runaways from various armies made their way to Miami. Runaway slaves made their way here. Even Native Americans who didn't want to be part of emerging nations in the north often found their way to the mouth of Miami. It kind of was a place to get away. Much like lots of people come to Miami today to kind of refashion who they want to be, kind of your typical immigrant experience. That's very much Miami's story for a very long time.
Andrew, are the Keys ever considered not part of Florida, or does that issue not happen?
Well, prior to say the British arrival, the Keys kind of have this nebulous place because they are very much how to put it? They're very much kind of this intermediary space between the heart of the Spanish Empire, which is Mexico and Havana, and the path towards Spain. So all these boats are taking these shipping lanes where they're leaving Mexico and they're stopping in Cuba, and from there they are trying to find safe harbor the best way they can to catch the right currents to take them back to Spain. And so the Keys become this place that is both part of the Spanish Empire. They don't care whether it's really Florida or not. They just know it's under Spanish. It's part of the Spanish Empire. And so it is somewhere in between Florida, which really doesn't have, it's because of, and Havana. So I'm not answering this very well, but in the Spanish sense, Florida really was St. Augustine and Pensacola, and all the stuff south of that and into the interior was Indian country. So the Keys were really far from that. But it was very, very close, of course, to Cuba. And so for the colonial officials in Cuba, they saw Havana and Key West in that area as very much being part of the same place. So technically it's part of Florida, but in terms of the way in which people, it really wasn't.
Yeah, I'm wondering if because of Cuba's close proximity, if in the early days of development of Miami and Florida, do they ever think that Cuba could be absorbed into Florida?
If Cuba could be what? Excuse me?
Like absorbed into the state of Florida at any point. Is that argument ever made?
It is repeatedly stated amongst the Spanish and then later amongst the British and then as part of the United States as to whether Cuba becomes part of this larger empire. So Spain certainly saw itself as wanting to occupy Florida, and Florida at some point extended pretty far north into what we would now imagine we call Virginia, right? So the Spanish Empire claimed a really large swath of land, and Cuba and Miami and the rest of Florida were all part of that same world. And then when we fast forward in time to when the British are here and then later the United States, there's been this long story of the United States seeing Cuba as part of manifest destiny, that the United States, of course, is spreading west, and lots of Americans are imagining this as part of this natural progress of the nation. And a lot of people saw this as the same thing that would happen in Cuba, not necessarily as part of the expansion of the United States in general.
Are you part of a panel discussion at Miami Book Fair, or are you doing a separate presentation on
I'm part of a panel on I believe it's on Florida history. I got some details about it this morning. It's pretty exciting. I'm going to be on Sunday morning.
Well, we'll encourage our listeners as we broadcast live from Miami to come down, get a hotel room, and see the greatest book fair in the country. I take
That
it
is
you've
the
been there.
truth.
You've been there before, right, Andrew?
I have been there. It's wonderful. It's really amazing. There's something for everyone.
The Miami Book Fair International and our broadcast presented by Brown & Brown Insurance and by Florida Power and Light. Andrew Frank, the author of Before the Pioneers, our guest today on WNDB. Andrew, thanks for sharing some time with us. Good luck in Miami.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
More of Mark Bernier Replay today. Highlights from today's show that you may have missed. Coming up on WNDB.
Hi, this is Dr. Ashley Lentz from Lentz Plastic Surgery. In this crazy world today, we need to stop, slow down, show kindness, support our friends, family, and neighbors, and spread compassion. Everyone is dealing with something, and we can all be more aware. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and here at Lentz Plastic Surgery, we believe in helping women rebuild their lives after their cancer diagnosis. As many of you know, breast cancer affects 1 in 8 women. It's not just the physical defects that change your life when you are given this diagnosis, it's also the emotional ones. We are here to support you on your journey with getting your life back on track. Please join the Lentz Plastic Surgery team on Saturday, October 28th for the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer Walk. It's located at Riverfront Park at 9 a.m. We want to celebrate life and pay tribute to the amazing women who have courageously battled breast cancer. Just remember, one person can make a difference in this world. Let's all make that positive difference together. Call Lentz Plastic Surgery, 386-252-8051.
Now, more of Mark Bernier Replay today. Highlights of today's show recorded earlier on FM 93.5, AM 1150, WNDB.
Well, it looks like we're still in positive territory. Duke Seekers, independent trader and portfolio manager, offers personal service. You can reach him at 386-214-6897. He joins us live today on WNDB's Bernier program. So, Duke, tell us, what's going on?
Well, had a pretty good day today. The Dow was actually up 113 points, or about 0.5%. The Nasdaq was up even better, up 50 points, which was better than 0.75% on that index. The S&P 500 was up 14. So, good market news all the way around. Crude oil was up 1.5%, closing at $50.74 per barrel, which was kind of interesting to see. Gold, as you might expect, gave back some, about 0.5%, closing at $12.71 per ounce. And the 10-year Treasury yield, indicating just a bit of selling in the Treasuries, rose to 2.35. So, pretty good day for the market. You just wonder how much further it can go before we have a pullback, because we're in some rarefied air right now. I'll put it that way.
Well, Chuck Bennett and I spoke this morning about whether a correction was coming or not. Do you think that a correction is imminent?
It depends what you want to call a correction. A smallest move, yes, almost for sure. A true correction, which is considered 10% or more on one of the major indexes, I'm just not sure about that right now. It certainly could. A lot of times it's very hard to see something developing ahead of time. But I think we're due for, say, a 4 or 5% pullback in the Dow and the S&P anyhow, sometime in the near future. If it goes any further than that, right now I'd be a little bit surprised that it does, because it's just so bullish out there. Unless we have, some sort of thing that comes at you out of left field, some catastrophe that strikes. But aside of that, I think that we're probably due for let's just call it for now, 5% pullback in the major indexes sometime in the near future.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
all right,
it's nothing to be real worried about. 5%, people forget that there were days when the market actually went down. It's been so bullish since November. And, a little bit of give and take is just part of normal market motion. It really is. And, people can't get too overly concerned about it. It's not the end of the world if the market pulls back 4 or 5 or, even a little bit more than that.
I just noticed something looking at the Las Vegas story as we turn to other news of the day. The Vegas Monster had a secret life
The radio stations of Southern Stone Communications, FM 93.5, AM 1150, WNDB Daytona Beach. Proud to be locally owned.
The investigation into the Las Vegas gunman deepens. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. Stephen Paddock may have considered a different target before carrying out the mass murder at the Country Music Festival Sunday night. Fox's Steve Rappaport has this live.
Lisa, investigators say Paddock scoped out the Lollapalooza Festival in Chicago and the Life is Beautiful Festival in Vegas before settling on the Route 91 Harvest Festival last weekend. That might have been the tip of the iceberg, as authorities believe Paddock plotted additional attacks, including a car bombing. Meanwhile, sales of the device that Paddock used to modify his guns into automatic weapons are soaring. One manufacturer suspending bump stock orders because of low supplies, and a website that sells them posted a message online today saying they're out of stock. Lisa?
Steve, there's growing support among Democrats and Republicans on limiting bump stocks.
I think getting rid of bump stocks makes sense, and I think anyone who thinks that solves the problem is crazy. We have to go much further and do rational gun control. The thing that has the best chance of passing, that would do the most good, is universal background checks.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
Let's let the sheriff and the authorities carry out their entire investigation, but I think this is definitely an area we're going to look and be able to act on.
House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, the NRA, issuing a statement earlier today saying bump stocks need further regulation. A state of emergency already declared in Louisiana as they brace for Tropical Storm Nate, which could become a hurricane in the next couple days.
The bottom line for people is that you need to be where you want to be and in the posture you want to be by dark on Saturday.
Governor John Bel Edwards, 1,300 National Guard troops are being mobilized, with 15 headed to New Orleans to monitor the pumping system there. Oil and gas companies have begun evacuating production platforms. Authorities in Costa Rica say 7 people have died in the storm. Fox News, fair and balanced.
The clock is ticking. Every day you put off buying life insurance can cost you big time. The older you get, the more you'll have to pay. And a sudden accident or unexpected illness could cause your rates to skyrocket or even make you uninsurable. Beat the clock. Call Select Quote now. No hassle, no obligation. In minutes, you'll have a choice of your best rates from up to 10 highly rated life insurance companies. Richard, 40 years old, takes meds to control his cholesterol. Still, Select Quote got him a 10-year, $500,000 policy for under $25 a month. Under $1 a day. Don't risk your family security another minute. Get your free quote now. Just call 800-280-8787. That's 800-280-8787. 800-280-8787. Or go to SelectQuote.com. Since 1985, we shop, you save.
Get full details on the example policy at SelectQuote.com/commercials. Or price could vary depending on your health, issuing company, and other factors. Not available
The
in all states.
opinions expressed on this show are those of the participants, the hosts, the guests, and the callers, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions and views of Southern Stone Communications, WNDB Radio, its employees, and friends. Comments regarding WNDB's programming can be addressed to D. Lang at DaytonaRadio.com.
Live from Daytona Beach, Florida, bringing a voice to America's forgotten working class, speaking the truth for the America that Washington left behind, making America great again, 1 hour at a time. This is Trump Talk Live, where we the people have the right voice. Presented by the Republican Party of Volusia County. Here now are your hosts for this episode, Vic Baker and Joe Fieldus.
Greetings, fellow American patriot Trumppublicans, and welcome to the Mandalay Massacre, Puerto Rico disaster, NFL fan sacking, T-Rex rejects fake news, Russian collusion delusion, rocket fuel tax reform episode of Trump Talk Live, the home of fearless truth-telling about President Donald Trump and his mission to console a grieving nation. Rebuild devastated U.S. territories and make America stand together on common ground in the greatest nation humanity has ever witnessed. The Mandalay Massacre is a sobering wake-up call for a nation strangely obsessed with political stunts by pro football players who seem to lack a full and proper understanding of the basic daily sacrifices made by first responders and military personnel to keep us safe. President Trump set the tone this week with a message America needed to hear. Words of gratitude and respect for courageous first responders who put themselves in harm's way to save others. Words of comfort and prayer for lost loved ones, grieving families, and a nation in shock once again. Words of inspiration and hope for America, calling upon the bonds that unite us, our faith, our family, and our shared values, bonds of citizenship, the ties of community, and comfort of our common humanity. He called this the worst mass shooting in U.S. history, an act of pure evil. He told the nation our unity cannot be shattered by evil. Our bonds cannot be broken by violence. And though we feel such great anger at the senseless murder of our fellow citizens, it is our love that defines us today and always will forever. Compare that with the vulgar snark and vicious comments coming from the left. These are the people who call themselves progressives. They've accused conservatives of cold-hearted cynicism, but venom drips from their lips and their keyboards. Examples. A leftist teacher celebrated the horrific massacre in Las Vegas, presuming many of the victims are likely to have been white Trump supporters. Her Twitter name is Ann, #TheResistance. She actually tweeted, "Lots of Trump supporters in Las Vegas at Route 21 watching Jason Aldean. Pray only Trump-tards died. #Pray for Vegas. Are you kidding me?" Presumably her prayers for Vegas do not include so-called Trump-tards. She deleted the tweet and her Twitter account after drawing a flood tide of outrage. This is a school teacher? A top legal executive for CBS was fired after her Facebook post said she is not even sympathetic for the victims of the shooting at the Country Music Festival in Vegas. Her post said, "If they wouldn't do anything with children who were murdered, I have no hope that Repugs will ever do to the right thing." Haley Geffman Gold can spend her time now searching Facebook for job openings. Hillary, true to form, blames the NRA and Republicans for the mass shooting, as if a million new gun control laws could stop even one lawless maniac from mass murder. These are the same lefties who excoriate Donald Trump for using rough language. Yet they cheer on a mass murderer because most of the sniper's victims are presumed to be Trumpublicans? There's no logic, no compassion, and certainly no moral high ground for these verbal snipers. The Mandalay Massacre puts the Kneeling Football League in a new light. Cheap political stunts at sporting events and entertainment venues pale by comparison with rivers of blood sent flowing by hearts full of hate. Americans have rendered their verdict on the self-righteous, ill-informed, disrespectful, pampered millionaires who try to disrespect America's cherished values and proud heritage. The kneelers of pro sports in Hollywood choose to dishonor police officers who run into danger when others run away. They choose to ignore the personal peril that first responders and military personnel face every day in order to guard the safety and well-being of their fellow Americans. They disrespect generations that shed precious patriot blood and sacrifice their own lives to guarantee their right to protest. They choose to desecrate American emblems that have inspired heroes to right the wrongs and rescue those who have been wronged. The American people are wise enough to know who the real heroes are. Sunday Night Football ratings are collapsing, down another 5%. 80% of NFL fans say they'll watch less football, and 53% will support Trump even more because of his strong stand for the national anthem and Old Glory. ESPN has reversed course, restoring the national anthem on Monday Night Football in light of the tragedy unfolding in Las Vegas. Again, when confronted with life and death drama, as a nation weeps for Las Vegas, perhaps America is ready to come to its senses and stand up for Old Glory, stand up for our national anthem, and stand up in a proud salute to our real heroes. Our president has dropped the flag to half-staff. He's meeting you halfway, folks. President Trump and the First Lady also made time this week to meet the victims of Hurricanes Irma and Maria in devastated U.S. territories of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. The president has unleashed the powers of the U.S. military to deliver food, water, medical supplies and services, security, and restore power to Puerto Rico. This tropical island of more than 3 million remains in the dark without much of the basic essentials after a Category 5 hurricane of epic proportions. A 3-star general is commanding more than 10,000 military personnel in a Herculean effort to restore homes, businesses, and the comforts of life. The president met the Democrat mayor of San Juan, who's been lobbying fierce partisan criticism of the effort. At least this time she showed up. She's been mostly AWOL from the FEMA briefings. President Trump warns it will take some time but promises to rebuild Puerto Rico. President Trump tells manufacturers his tax reform plan will be a rocket fuel for America's economy. And after more than 100 witnesses and 100,000 documents, the Senate Intel Committee still has no findings on the Russian collusion delusion, except that the Russians did not change one single American vote. We're coming to you tonight live from the studios of WNDB, 1150 AM or 93.5 FM in Daytona Beach. You can also listen online at TrumpTalkLive.com. You can watch us live on the Volusia County Republican Facebook page or by searching YouTube for Trump Talk Live on the Vic Baker channel. Our thanks to Volusia TAR's chairman, Duncan DeMarche. You're seeing him right there live on his Duncan Cam, running our Facebook, YouTube graphics with assistance from fellow teenage Republicans, the dynamic trio of Malcolm Swaggerty and Ian Escalade along with Duncan. I'm your Trump-Publican host and truth teller tonight, Vic Baker, co-hosting with Joe Fieldis, who's filling in for Tony Ledbetter, who's out on a Daytona street corner selling the last remaining tickets to the Judge Janine Pirro appearance at this Sunday's Lincoln Day dinner at the Ocean Center. A few tickets are left, and Tony will not let the scalpers get a hold of them, so you still have a chance to get a good deal on a ticket. Joe.
Good evening, Vic. Hello, friends. Tax reform will likely be the issue that determines the success or failure of the Trump presidency. Is that overstated? Can it be that big an issue? Let's look at some history. It was 1981 when Congress passed the Economic Recovery Tax Act, which amended the Internal Revenue Code of 1954. It passed 67-8 in the Senate and 282-95 in the House of Representatives. 5 years later, it was followed by the Tax Reform Act of 1986, which was passed in the Senate 74-23 and in the House 292-136. These two laws are credited with an economic prosperity that is often referred to as the Reagan boom, the greatest period of economic expansion in American history. It was a signature achievement of the Reagan presidency. Many would argue it was his greatest achievement. I included the vote counts from that time to remind everyone that without his winning in Congress, the Reagan boom never happened. So here we are. It's been over 3 decades since the Reagan reforms, and our tax system desperately needs a makeover. Did you know that 50% of the American people do not even file a federal tax return? Those of us who do file each year often need to pay for specialized help in order to comply with a crazy maze of tax laws and to keep the IRS enforcers away. And by the way, this extreme complexity is imposed on us by design to make it nearly impossible for everyday citizens to understand the tax game. It also disguises how over the years the special interests have persuaded Congress to rig the tax code in their favor. The result is that we are now the most taxed nation on earth, and as a country, we're stuck with a multi-generational debt of over $20 trillion and growing. This puts the American economy in a stranglehold, with small businesses hit especially hard. Big business responded to overtaxation by moving trillions of dollars overseas. This money would come home if the president's plan becomes law. All of this leaves American working class people carrying a very heavy load. But despite the obvious need for tax reform, the swamp is going to fight with all their might to kill the president's plan. Why? Because the main function of the army of lobbyists encamped in D.C. is to protect the current tax code, which over the years has become their tax code. They don't care that it's hurting us. They're the swamp. They want control. And as they did to defeat Obamacare repeal efforts, these Washington agents of corruption will blanket with cash those in Congress who are more than willing to accept it. The only effective counterweight is huge pressure from the voters. And that's us, folks. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are who the politicians fear. So find a way to reach out and touch your representatives. Find a way. As last November 8th proved, when we work together in common cause, we can move mountains. Vic, let's roll.
Okay. We are going to get into the Mandalay Massacre and the way our president has responded to that in Puerto Rico. But we don't have enough time to do much of that now, so let's go to our break, and we'll be back with more Trump Talk Live in a moment.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. Stay tuned for more Trump Talk Live, bringing a voice to America's forgotten working class 1 hour at a time.
Hurricane season is here, and so is the 2017 WNDB Hurricane Tracking Map. This colorful and informative map not only lists coordinates to make tracking easy, it also has the information to help you stay prepared, just in case. The 2017 WNDB Hurricane Tracking Map is available at any one of our Hurricane Tracking Map sponsors, including Kuntz Heating and Air Conditioning, dedicated to providing the best service since 1967. On the web at kuntzhvac.com. Realtor Donna Lang with Coldwell Banker Coast Realty. Donna is your safest bet in real estate. Donna gets it done. Go to DonnaGetsItDone.com. And you can also get a copy of the WNDB Hurricane Tracking Map at Bill Partington's AHC Safe and Lock, your full-service locksmith and door hardware supplier, and your architectural hardware consultant since 1953. Bill Partington's AHC Safe and Lock. Pick up your copy of the WNDB Hurricane Map today and get prepared, just in case.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Welcome back, Trumpublicans. This is almost too big to get your arms around because it's events like these, as of course 9/11 was the same kind of a thing. There's so many young lives just destroyed, young and old, and there was an indiscriminate killing, a massacre, and we don't have the why. What we do have is a president who stepped up to the podium Monday and consoled the nation, and President Trump had just the right words.
It was an act of pure evil. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are working closely with local authorities to assist with the investigation, and they will provide updates as to the investigation and how it develops. I want to thank the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and all of the first responders for their courageous efforts and for helping to save the lives of so many. The speed with which they acted is miraculous and prevented further loss of life. To have found the shooter so quickly after the first shots were fired is something for which we will always be thankful and grateful.
He had words of consolation to those who grieve and those who are injured, and the wounds, of course, will take a long time to heal.
Hundreds of our fellow citizens are now mourning the sudden loss of a loved one, a parent, a child, a brother or sister. We cannot fathom their pain. We cannot imagine their loss. To the families of the victims, we are praying for you, and we are here for you. And we ask God to help see you through this very dark period. Scripture teaches us the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. We seek comfort in those words, for we know that God lives in the hearts of those who grieve. To the wounded who are now recovering in hospitals, we are praying for your full and speedy recovery and pledge to you our support from this day forward.
Now, those that call Donald Trump a divisive president, this president knew what to say and how to say it on this particular day. We'll continue.
In moments of tragedy and horror, America comes together as one, and it always has. We call upon the bonds that unite us, our faith, our family, and our shared values. We call upon the bonds of citizenship, the ties of community, and the comfort of our common humanity. Our unity cannot be shattered by evil. Our bonds cannot be broken by violence. And though we feel such great anger at the senseless murder of our fellow citizens, it is our love that defines us today and always will, forever. In times such as these, I know we are searching for some kind of meaning in the chaos, some kind of light in the darkness. The answers do not come easy. But we can take solace knowing that even the darkest space can be brightened by a single light, and even the most terrible despair can be illuminated by a single ray of hope. Melania and I are praying for every American who has been hurt, wounded, or lost the ones they love so dearly in this terrible, terrible attack. We pray for the entire nation to find unity and peace, and we pray for the day when evil is banished and the innocent are safe from hatred and from fear.
At the same time and on the very same day, his press secretary, Sarah Sanders, took the podium and almost lost control of her emotions as she discussed the sacrifice paid by heroes, both those who are paid to be heroes and those who just stepped up to be heroes in the midst of this bloodshed and chaos in Vegas. And here's what she had to say.
Sadly, multiple police officers, both on duty and off duty, were among those killed or injured. But what these people did for each other says far more about who we are as Americans than the cowardly acts of a killer ever could. The Gospel of John reminds us that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for a friend. The memory of those who displayed the ultimate expression of love in the midst of an unimaginable act of hate will never fade. Their examples will serve as an eternal reminder that the American spirit cannot and will not ever be broken. In the days ahead, we will grieve as a nation, we will honor the memory of those lost as a nation, and we will come together, united as one nation, under God and indivisible.
Clearly shaken, Sarah Sanders. Now that contrasted with a CBS legal executive, a vice president, Haley Geftman-Gold, who said in a Facebook post she's not even sympathetic for the victims of the shooting at the Country Music Festival at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas Sunday night. If they wouldn't do anything when children were murdered, I have no hope that repugs, she called them, would do the right thing. She's referring to Sandy Hook. I'm actually not even sympathetic because country music fans are often Republican gun toters, she said. Well, she left that office toting her personal possessions because CBS fired her. Despicable reaction from a school teacher. A leftist school teacher celebrated the horrific massacre because she called the victims likely to have been what she called Trump-tards. And they talk about the president being insensitive? Please, let's move on. The governor of Nevada, Brian Sandoval, welcomed President Trump, who came to Las Vegas this week to express his condolences and to salute the many heroes who saved so many lives when minutes made every difference. And here's what the governor said about the lifesavers.
Their bravery, their professionalism, and everything that they've done for us. It makes me so proud as a governor. The first responders and how they've reacted to this situation and provided so much love and care for all the people that were harmed by this horrible incident. The medical community, the men and women at all our hospitals who came to the aid of all these people. The employees at MGM Resorts and how they responded as well. And everyone else, perfect strangers, and how they responded to this and gave love and assistance to their fellow man. You know, I also want to thank the people from across the country and across the world for their outpouring of support and generosity that has come here. It's unprecedented in our history.
So, President Trump stepped up. He met with the medical personnel. In fact, he actually invited them to come to the White House and visit him. He stepped up with the police officers and personally congratulated them and heard their stories. And here's what he had to say.
The people of Nevada and the extraordinary city have shown the world their incredible character, courage, and resolve. Nevada really is a very, very special place. I'm honored to be here today at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department in the company of heroes. Thank you to our police, our firefighters, and to our first responders, and of course to Sheriff Lombardo. Incredible job you've done.
He told them, a nation grieves with you and for you.
The mass murder that took place on Sunday night fills America's heart with grief. America is truly a nation in mourning. I visited the hospital earlier today, where many victims are still recovering from their wounds, and we ask God to ease their suffering and to speed their healing. We pray for the recovery of the injured and those injured officers who so bravely threw themselves into danger when duty called. And we grieve the loss of the law enforcement personnel who were killed in this vicious attack. Many families tonight will go to bed in a world that is suddenly empty. The people they so dearly love were torn away from them forever. Our souls are stricken with grief for every American who lost a husband or a wife, a mother or a father, a son or a daughter. We know that your sorrow feels endless. We stand together to help you carry your pain. You're not alone. We will never leave your side.
Joe, that is a president who spoke as a father, a grandfather of, the patriarch of the nation. This is the kind of leadership this nation requires, and he provided it.
It's a horrible moment. I'm online a lot, Vic, and some of the earlier horrible comments from the teacher and the CBS executive, that is more common than you'd realize, more common than you'd ever believe on the blogs, etc. Just horrible, politicizing the thing immediately, pointing the fingers at the crowd, who they were, and everybody wants to kind of wonder what's this guy, this person who did this thing. And I don't want to go all conspiracy theory here on everybody, but here's what the Las Vegas sheriff, which Joseph Lombardo, said yesterday. This is a quote. At face value, he had to have help at some point. Maybe he was a superhuman who figured all this out on his own by himself, but it would be hard for me to believe that. And then our friend Representative Trey Gowdy from South Carolina, who is a former federal prosecutor, said this on Monday, quote, "It's an incredible level of premeditation that you don't ordinarily see. It's difficult to believe that a single person could have done this without detection." End quote.
Exactly. It is implausible. Now, we won't get into conspiracy theories. It's too early. The FBI has discounted ISIS as being a cause, even though they've claimed the responsibility for it. We don't know what the ultimate motive is. The man may have died with that secret, but the FBI is doing its best to dig the secrets out with his girlfriend, whom he sent $100,000 to Philippines to help her buy a house, and sent her off and said, go away and stay out of the way, and she didn't seem to have any idea what he was up to.
A lot more to know.
She is going to be telling the FBI a lot more, I'm sure, but she didn't know very much because I don't think he shared it with her. Now, the issue of gun control, bump stocks, the celebrity response to this, we will get into all of that, and we'll welcome your phone calls if you want to join the conversation. There is much more to talk about with this, Puerto Rico, and other issues, and we're going to run out of time, so let's get to the break, and we'll be right back.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. You have the right place on the dial, and when we return, you'll hear more Trump Talk Live, telling the truth about all things Trump.
Shopping the 1,000 booths at the Daytona Beach Flea and Farmers Market's the best way to jumpstart your weekend.
Come see dozens of new vendors. The Daytona Flea and Farmers Market is the place for great savings and the best variety, and there's never a charge for parking or admission.
With the largest monthly car show on the coast and a monthly arts and crafts show, there's always a reason to visit.
Get all the details at DaytonaFleaMarket.com or like them on Facebook.
Open every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 9 to 5, 1 mile west of the Speedway on Tomoka Farms Road.
Attention music fans, the 7th annual Daytona Blues Festival will take place at Jackie Robinson Ballpark this weekend. 3 full days of great music from national blues acts featuring Marcy Ball, Joe Louis Walker, Tinsley Ellis, and Daytona's own Victor Wainwright. Enjoy the comfort and convenience of the Jack. There'll be plenty of tasty food and a craft beer festival on Saturday. For more info, head to DaytonaBluesFestival.com, and we'll see you at the Daytona Blues Festival this weekend.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Okay, we wanted to thank our sponsors. And by the way, if you want to be a sponsor, please contact Tony Ledbetter. He will be happy to talk to you about that. Sonia Mori, she's our State Farm agent in DeLand. Ask Sonia for an insurance checkup. Milne Roofing. And this is the time to have your roof in good shape. Call Milne Roofing, 386-986-8688. For the best pizza in DeLand, Marino's Pizza. And our newest sponsor, South Daytona Storage and Offices. Their phone number is 386-262-1857.
Thank you, Joe. We have to pay the bills around here, of course. Now, Ari Fleischer was George W. Bush's press secretary. He's a pretty wise guy, and he thinks that Trump should ban bump stocks. A lot of people don't realize this. Bump stocks, what they are is an attachment you put on the stock of a semi-automatic, and the recoil of the rifle pushes with a spring the gun back so it hits into your trigger finger, and it keeps your trigger finger pulling the trigger.
It makes it easier to shoot faster.
It makes it simulate an automatic weapon when it's a semi-automatic, okay? Well, it was the Obama administration, ATF, that changed the rule to say bump stocks were perfectly all right. That was in 2010. So does anybody want to blame the Republicans for this? Just keep in mind, it was the Democrat President Obama's administration that legalized bump stocks. Ari Fleischer says they should be outlawed. Newt Gingrich thinks it'd be a good idea. Paul Ryan thinks it should be a good idea. So I think it's going to happen, but that's about all they're going to get for gun control, because you can pass 100 new gun control laws and it will not control a criminal who obeys none of them. So that's enough on that. The left is using the Las Vegas massacre to try to push that. It's not going to happen. Bump stocks, we know what they look like. That we've seen what they look like. Okay, so enough of that. Now, the late night comedians are no longer funny. They're tragic. They're tragic, all of them. They claim to have diverse opinions, but in truth, they speak with one voice, and it's all left-leaning. I don't know about you, but I don't watch these guys anymore because I can't get a laugh. You know, you can watch Johnny Carson or you can watch Jay Leno, and you get some relief from this stuff. There is no relief. You can't go to a sports game and get relief. You can't watch late-night comedy and get a relief. So the TV set is off at night, and perhaps it's time to read a few books. Hopefully we can find some good ones and not Hillary's. Okay, enough of that. Okay, so Jimmy Kimmel, don't cry for me, Argentina. I don't want to hear another word from you. All right, gun control. The Democrats don't want to use the word. Now, Nora O'Donnell on CBS this morning interviewed Steve Scalise, who knows a little bit about what happens when people try to assassinate political figures.
Yes, he does.
He will walk with crutches for the rest of his life. He's permanently disabled as a result of being targeted by somebody who hated Republicans. And he was a lefty Democrat who shot the gun. Okay. Nora O'Donnell asked, well, you're a victim. Aren't you for more gun control? Here's what he said.
But you're now a victim of gun violence.
Yeah, but I'm also saved by well-trained people who had guns to shoot back. And whatever the weapon's going to be, I mean, if it's not a gun, it'll be a hand grenade or it'll be a knife or an axe. I think what's important to focus on is that we have strong rights in this country, and we're protected by them.
Okay, and he also interviewed with Martha McCallum on Fox News, and she asked if his experience had changed his viewpoint.
Have your experience of your own and what you saw in Las Vegas, has it changed how you feel about any of that?
I think it's fortified it because, first of all, you've got to recognize that, when there's a tragedy like this, the first thing we should be thinking about is praying for the people who were injured and do whatever we can to help them, to help law enforcement. We shouldn't first be thinking of promoting our political agenda. And I think we see too much of that where people say, okay, now you have to have gun control. Well, first of all, look at some of those bills. Those bills wouldn't have done anything to stop this. I mean, the gunmen actually cleared background checks. So to promote some kind of gun control, I think is the wrong way to approach this. And frankly, what I experienced was when there was a shooter, luckily we had Capitol Police there with their own guns. Every single day in America, regular citizens that just have a passionate belief in the Second Amendment, that have their own guns, use guns every single day to protect themselves against criminals. And those stories never get told or hardly ever get told.
John Rich, country music star, who's on the stage before Jason Aldean. He has a bar in Vegas, and he was there performing a set when this news came in about what was going on stage. And John Rich put a statement out saying the politicizing of Sunday's evening's massacre in Las Vegas is about the most disgusting thing I've ever heard of. He told a story on Fox News about being in the bar and being approached by one of the patrons who showed his badge and said, I'm a Minnesota police officer off duty. I did not bring a weapon with me. Do you carry? He said, yes, I do, sir. He said, could I borrow your handgun, your weapon? Because I want to stand point at your door to make sure everybody in here stays safe for the rest of the night. So that off-duty police officer stood guard at the door for them because he had a gun to do it. That's what the guns are for, to protect law-abiding citizens. And here's a little statistic for you. Fully automatic weapons have been used in homicide cases. How many times in the last 83 years? 3 times. Vegas being the third. I'm not saying there are multiple victims in this case, but there are 3 cases where automatic weapons, fully automatic weapons, in this case they were simulated automatic weapons, used in cases where there were fatal shootings. Only 3 times. It's not that common. Here's another little chart for you to look at. Let's get that chart up. Okay, guns per person versus gun homicide rate 1993 to 2013. Guess what? The number of gun owners increased by roughly 54% during that 20-year period. The number of homicides, Joe? Down by about half, 49%. So there is no correlation between private gun ownership by law-abiding citizens and homicides, Joe.
It was pointed out that the tragically 59 dead in Las Vegas is a number that virtually happens monthly in Chicago. If that, and yet that number seems to never get much notice by the media.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to Puerto Rico. Earlier in the week, the president visited Puerto Rico. He got quite a verbal beating from the mayor of San Juan, who was a Democrat, diehard Hillary Clinton person.
Big Hillary supporter.
Who herself was standing in front of pallets upon pallets of food, water, and other supplies, claiming that there had been no supplies delivered. At the same time, she did not attend any FEMA briefings or any coordinations, did not go to the operations center to see what was going on. But she was more than happy to stand in front of TV cameras and trash Donald Trump's response.
Yeah,
now, Donald Trump
she provided emergency media and reporters to people in need.
That's correct. Now, Donald Trump's military has 10,000 personnel on the ground run by a 3-star general. They've got an armada of ships. They've got planes, they've got helicopters, they've got hospital ships. They're doing everything they can, but you realize this island territory of 3 million some people didn't have a very good infrastructure to begin with, and a Category 5 hurricane finished off whatever they had, and the buildings are flattened, and there is no infrastructure, there's no electricity. This is going to be a military-style operation to rebuild them, and it's going to be from the ground up. So Trump visited, and here's what he talked about when he visited Puerto Rico and got a briefing from the people on the ground.
Before we were hit by Maria, we were hit by Hurricane Irma. And during that time, before the hurricane, he was FEMA acting together with a lot of employees. More than 4,000 people were here in the island from the different branches of the military. HHS, Navy, Army, FEMA, and all the staff working together before the hurricane hit. They were here before, during, after the first hurricane, and they continued to stay in the island, boots on the ground, during Maria. Same thing. I think we never got the level of communication between the federal government and the local government like never before. And we are in the path of the hurricanes. So we are used to receiving hurricanes, but never before a Category 5. The amount of devastation, it's unheard of. But during all this time, we got the federal government by our side, doing the job with the people here, like you in the military, doing all that is being asked, all the questions and requests that the governor did. The president and his cabinet accomplished it and send more people, and it's continued to send in more people, trucks, drivers, and resources. Thank you, Mr. President, for all you've been doing for the island.
That was, in fact, Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, who is the Congresswoman representing Puerto Rico. She's a Congress member who represents more people than any other congressperson. She represents 3 million people. I'm not sure if she's a voting member or not, because Puerto Rico is a territory, not a state. But in any case, that's her take on what the president's been doing for Puerto Rico. Now, the president praised the extraordinary effort by FEMA Director Brock Long, who's also been tirelessly working after the previous hurricanes that have hit Texas, that's Harvey, and Irma that hit Florida, and Harvey also hit Louisiana. Here's what he had to say about Brock Long.
You know, it's so important when you have men and women that have worked so hard and so long, and many of them came from 2 other catastrophic hurricanes. I mean, they came from Texas, they came from Louisiana, they came from Florida, and there was no, how many nights rest have you gotten? 0 in the last month, right?
This is day 43.
Yeah, all right, well, we're going to keep them for another couple of weeks, and by that time, I think, you know, but come here. Special guy, I will tell you, special. Really good. Really good.
Brock Long has done yeoman work in all of these circumstances, and he's had his hand on everything, so he deserves a lot of praise. Now, here's another thing. The governor of Puerto Rico is Ricardo Rosselló, okay? He's a Democrat. Let's listen to what the Democrat governor of Puerto Rico had to say about the federal response in Puerto Rico.
I want to personally thank you, Mr. President, because, you know, over the course of the past week, you have called essentially every day to make sure that we have what we need, make sure that the resources are over here. And I want to let the people of Puerto Rico and the people of the United States know that you have always responded to us.
That says it pretty well, doesn't it, Joe?
I think so.
President did say, though, he didn't say it in a very graceful way. This is going to cost a lot of money. He's going to be asking for something like $29 billion additional dollars for hurricane relief for the entire regions that have been affected. But here's what he said at the table, and the media immediately pounced on it. But here's what he said.
It was a great trip. I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you've thrown our budget a little out of whack because we've spent a lot of money on Puerto Rico, and that's fine. We've saved a lot of lives. If you look at the, every death is a horror. But if you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina, and you look at the tremendous hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that died, and you look at what happened here with really a storm that was just totally overpowering. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. Now, what is your death count as of this moment? 17?
16 certified.
16 people certified. 16 people versus in the thousands. You can be very proud of all of your people, all of our people working together.
Now, the president referenced Katrina. Something a little more than 1,800 people died as a result of Katrina. So that puts it in perspective. And 16 in Puerto Rico, where they don't have any infrastructure left, but they still managed to save lives. And that's the most important thing, as Governor Rick Scott has pointed out during Irma here in Florida. We can't replace a life. Okay, Joe, move on to the NFL. The NFL, just quickly, before we leave this segment, how Trump defeated the NFL, the NBA, and the media. He picked his fate by attacking Kaepernick and ilk, and the American people side with Trump on this. The NFL is paying a dear price. They're losing millions of dollars in revenue and ticket sales. ESPN is bowed finally to show the national anthem because now they're saying because of Las Vegas, but that's such a phoniness. A fan poll, 80% say they'll watch less football. 53% support Trump more because he took a stand for the players to stand for the national anthem. NFL backlash, Sunday Night Football ratings tank again, and they're heading south every time they have a game. So what do you think?
I'm a long-time NFL fan. Anybody that knows me, I mean, I've got fantasy football teams. I had the NFL Sunday ticket where you pay extra to get every game every week. I no longer have that, and my TV is off during these games now. I still read the scores, but the NFL's lost something here, and I don't think they're going to get it back. I don't think they understand that yet, but they're going to.
Okay. It's time for us to give you another message, but when we return, we're going to take a big wade into the D.C. swamp and a whole panoply of subjects to talk about when Trump Talk Live returns.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. We'll return in a moment to bring you more Trump Talk Live, shedding the light of truth from that shining city on a hill.
Hurricane season is here, and so is the 2017 WNDB Hurricane Tracking Map. This colorful and informative map not only lists coordinates to make tracking easy, it also has the information to help you stay prepared, just in case. The 2017 WNDB Hurricane Tracking Map is available at any one of our Hurricane Tracking Map sponsors, including Kuntz Heating and Air Conditioning, dedicated to providing the best service since 1967. On the web at kuntzhvac.com. Realtor Donna Lang with Coldwell Banker Coast Realty. Donna is your safest bet in real estate. Donna gets it done. Go to DonnaGetsItDone.com. And you can also get a copy of the WNDB Hurricane Tracking Map at Bill Partington's AHC Safe and Lock, your full-service locksmith and door hardware supplier, and your architectural hardware consultant since 1953. Bill Partington's AHC Safe and Lock. Pick up your copy of the WNDB Hurricane Map today and get prepared, just in case.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Welcome back. Now, it's always hard when you have to come out and prove a negative to the media. When they've made up their mind that something happened, that they decided something happened. NBC News reported 3 sources said that Rex Tillerson threatened to quit after Trump made his speech to the Boy Scouts jamboree. He didn't like the Boy Scouts. Rex used to be the national chairman of the Boy Scouts, the honorary, head of the Boy Scouts. He's big. He's an Eagle Scout himself, I believe, as am I.
As are you, Vic.
And so the NBC News reported that he called him a moron and threatened to quit. Well, Rex Tillerson found it necessary after reading that to come out in his fancy State Department office and stand before reporters and give a statement. And first he talked about his commitment to the Trump agenda.
My commitment to the success of our president and our country is as strong as it was the day I accepted his offer to serve as Secretary of State. President Trump's America First agenda has given voice to millions who felt completely abandoned by the political status quo and who felt their interests came second to those of other countries. President Trump's foreign policy goals break the mold of what people traditionally think is achievable on behalf of our country. We're finding new ways to govern that deliver new victories. Our job is now to achieve results on behalf of America, and we are doing that.
Very specific. And then he said, well, let's address this 10-ton elephant in the room about whether I threatened to quit. Let's talk about that.
To address a few specifics that have been erroneously reported this morning. The Vice President has never had to persuade me to remain as Secretary of State because I have never considered leaving this post. Let me tell you what I've learned about this President, whom I did not know before taking this office. He loves his country. He puts Americans and America first. He's smart. He demands results wherever he goes, and he holds those around him accountable for whether they've done the job he's asked them to do. Accountability is one of the bedrock values the President and I share. While I'm new to Washington, I have learned that there are some who try to sow dissension to advance their own agenda by tearing others apart in an effort to undermine President Trump's own agenda. I do not, and I will not operate that way.
Which provoked a screed from the media. But he didn't say he didn't call President Trump a moron. He didn't say that. That's like saying, well, he didn't say he didn't beat his wife either.
The media are the morons, and they live in fake news. If it wasn't for fake news, I don't think they'd have anything else to say.
Rex realized, Rex didn't want to lower himself to even getting into that discussion, but he realized the media wouldn't shut up. So he sent his capable spokesperson, Heather Nauert, who used to work for Fox News, out to the State Department podium to issue this denial.
Secretary did not decline several opportunities this morning to dispute one particular part of that report, which is the idea that he called the president a moron. And I want to know whether you are comfortable with the fact that the widespread perception is that he did not dispute that part of the report because it's true.
Well, let me clarify that. The Secretary does not use that type of language. The Secretary did not use that type of language to speak about the President of the United States. He does not use that language to speak about anyone. So I hope that clarifies
So
it.
he never said
He
that.
did not say that. Okay. Hold on. Because I take the Secretary at his word. I spoke with the Secretary about that. The Secretary doesn't speak that way. I know he holds a very high standard when it comes to how people behave, how people speak. The Secretary is a man who frequently talks about integrity. Integrity is something that is important to him. I take him at his word, and when he tells me, Heather, he did not use that, I believe him.
End of subject.
It's absolutely incredible that we're dragged into this kind of conversation, and the media picks at all these things going on, and they take a man like Tillerson, and his statement was beautiful, by the way. They gave an opening to reaffirm the president's entire agenda in the most clear language possible.
Oh, he actually did a wonderful endorsement.
They took from that statement, well, he didn't specifically say he didn't call him a moron, so let's ask more
Once again,
questions.
it's the old question, when did you stop beating your wife? Okay.
It's just ridiculous.
Moving on to the Senate Intel Committee, which has been working since January or February to try to get the bottom of this Russian collusion delusion, as I call it. And they've reviewed 100,000 documents. They've heard from 100 witnesses from all around the world and the entire intelligence community. And on the issue of collusion, what have you found so far, Senator Burr, Chairman?
The issue of collusion is still open, that we continue to investigate both intelligence and witnesses, and that we're not in a position where we will come to any type of temporary finding on that until we've completed the process.
So tell us, Chairman, how did the Russians manage to change the outcome of our election?
We can certifiably say that no vote totals were affected, that the tallies are accurate, the outcome of the election based upon the count of votes, they did not in any way, shape, or form that we've been able to find alter that. I want to reiterate something that Mark said. You can't walk away from this and believe that Russia is not currently active in trying to create chaos in our election process.
Okay, that's the end of that. Now, fake news. Okay, remember all those the furor over the Facebook ads that Russia paid for? Maybe $100,000 worth of ads.
Yeah.
Just so you know, folks, 25% of them never ran at all, and half of them ran after the election, and half of those were favoring Democrats.
This kind of thing's been going on forever. I mean, it's just because of social media has become so aware. But all countries are our president went over in the last Israeli election, set up an office in Tel Aviv, and was directly interfering in the Israeli election.
Of course, they just blankly ignore that.
This goes on all the time, but
Exactly.
they pretend like this is the newest thing they've ever heard.
Good news. You said that Congress would never pay for the wall. Of course, Mexico is supposed to ultimately, but Congress, well, a House panel, the Homeland Security panel, chaired by Michael McCall, has approved a $10 billion allocation to fund the border wall. Ta-da! The border wall will get funding. Also, the House has approved a framework of a budget setting the stage for tax reform. We'll talk about it in a moment. Now, Judge Arpaio, our hero out in Arizona, who lost election after they prosecuted him, found him guilty of contempt of court. The judge did all by himself, no jury involved, okay? And then the president pardoned him. They said, but that may have been premature because there's no real case. Well, guess what happened? Federal judge has dismissed the case. The case doesn't exist anymore. It was all bogus. That judge had no authority to find him guilty of a crime.
Vic, I want to just briefly on the wall. It's being built right now, folks. We probably shouldn't say this because the crazies will run down there and throw themselves in front of the bulldozers. The wall is being built right now, folks.
We're moving on. Okay. Now, angry GOP donors are not happy about the faceplap the Senate gave us on health care, and they are bound and determined that the Senate had better get its act together and get tax reform through, which will have no trouble getting through the House. It's the Senate we've got to worry about. We got our John McCain types. So the angry donors had a meeting with Mitch McConnell, and they sent him a message. Mitch, you better do something. Do anything, or we're closing our wallets. We're drying up the money pool to pay for your reelection, so you better get the job done. Trump is waiting. The American people are waiting. Okay. And on to tax reform. President Trump met with the manufacturers, and he just talked about how it's going to dramatically improve our economy. Here is, in cut number 4, is what he described about what taxes are doing to us right now.
We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to pass tax reform that is pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-worker, pro-family, and pro-American. Our current tax code punishes companies for doing business in the United States and encourages them to leave. And that's what's happened for so many years. And that's one of the reasons, probably the prime reason, that companies are leaving our country and firing all those people. They're not bringing the jobs with them. They're giving other countries those jobs, firing all of those great people. That's stopping. We need a tax system that encourages companies to stay in America, grow in America, and hire in America.
This is going to be what he described, Joe, and we'll finish off the show by just talking here. Rocket fuel for the economy. One of the big sticking points now is there are some Republicans in big states that have income tax and high property taxes where wealthier people can, and average middle-class Americans can deduct from their federal taxes the cost of their local and state taxes. And that's becoming a sticking point. But as Trump says, that's more than $1 trillion that's going to help us get this done. And it's about time we didn't favor states that have heavy taxes, that we basically stop Florida shouldn't have to subsidize New York State, for instance.
There's a $3 to $5 trillion overseas that needs to come back, and it won't come back until this bill passes. This bill will allow that money to come back.
I predict it will pass. I'm not sure if it'll pass by the end of this year, but it better, because if it doesn't, the Republicans are in a heap of trouble. We've got some by the way, Marsha Blackburn, Tennessee. She's going to be running for U.S. Senate, another pro-Trump Republican. We want to thank everybody for joining us for Trump Talk Live. We'll make America great again next Thursday starting at 7:03. Stay with us, and we'll see you at the Lincoln Day dinner.
Attention music fans, the 7th annual Daytona Blues Festival will take place at Jackie Robinson Ballpark this weekend. 3 full days of great music from national blues acts featuring Marcy Ball, Joe Louis Walker, Tinsley Ellis, and Daytona's own Victor Wainwright. Enjoy the comfort and convenience of the Jack. There'll be plenty of tasty food and a craft beer festival on Saturday. For more info, head to DaytonaBluesFestival.com, and we'll see you at the Daytona Blues Festival this weekend.
You've been listening to Trump Talk Live. Making America great again, 1 hour at a time. Follow us at Volusia County Republican Party on Facebook or go to our website, TrumpTalkLive.com, for updates. Join your Trumpublican hosts, Vic Baker and Tony Ledbetter, for another fearless edition of Trump Talk Live next Thursday at 7 p.m. right here on WNDB 1150 AM and 93.5 FM. Trump Talk Live is presented each week by the Republican Party of Volusia County, where we the people have the right voice when it comes to defending America's founding values. In God we trust. In America, we believe.
The Republican Executive Committee of Volusia County is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The radio stations of Southern Stone Communications, FM 93.5, AM 1150, WNDB Daytona Beach. Proud to be locally owned.
He may have planned more attacks. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. Investigators in Las Vegas say gunman Stephen Paddock was looking at other music festivals before Sunday's massacre, which killed 58 and wounded nearly 500. Fox's Steve Rappaport has this live.
Lisa, Lollapalooza in Chicago and the Life is Beautiful Festival in Vegas were also potential targets, with Paddock scoping them out in recent weeks. 4 days into the investigation,